Imagine a man so empowered by divine strength that he outran the king's fastest horses. This is the extraordinary story of Elijah, the fastest man in the Bible. Elijah was a prophet unlike any other. He lived in a time of great turmoil and spiritual confusion. He was a beacon of hope in a dark time. He was a man who walked with God. Imagine this scene, a lone figure running faster than any horse, leaving the king's chariot trailing in the dust. This wasn't a scene from a chariot race, but a display of God's power through his prophet Elijah. Elijah's life was marked by miracles. The most famous one, the time he outran a chariot. This wasn't just any chariot, it belonged to the king. King Ahab was no ordinary king, and Elijah was his greatest adversary. This story isn't just about a race, it's about faith. It's about the incredible things that can happen when God empowers ordinary people. The story of Elijah is a testament to the fact that with God, all things are possible. It reminds us that God can use anyone, no matter how ordinary they may seem, to accomplish extraordinary things. Elijah's life serves as a source of inspiration for us, encouraging us to remain steadfast in our faith, even when faced with adversity. Elijah's story is a reminder that God is real and powerful. He is still in the business of performing miracles. We serve a God who can do anything. To understand Elijah's story, we need to travel back in time. Imagine ancient Israel, a land promised to God's people. King Ahab ruled the land, but he wasn't a good king. He let his wife, Queen Jezebel, lead him astray. Jezebel worshipped a false god named Baal. Jezebel was a powerful and ruthless queen. She forced people to worship Baal. Many Israelites abandoned their faith in God. They followed Jezebel's lead. The kingdom was divided. Idolatry and wickedness spread like a disease. Elijah, a simple prophet from the countryside, dared to challenge the king and queen. He stood up for God even though it meant risking his life. He knew in his heart that there was only one true God. He boldly proclaimed the truth to anyone who would listen. Elijah's message was clear. If the Lord is truly God, follow him wholeheartedly. But if you believe Baal is God, reconsider and transform your path. Elijah's challenge was a turning point in the history of Israel. It was a time for the people to choose between the one true God and the false gods of their neighbors. The tension between Elijah and the rulers of Israel reached its peak on Mount Carmel. Imagine a crowd gathered on the mountaintop. On one side stood Elijah, the lone prophet of God. On the other side were hundreds of prophets of Baal. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Elijah issued a challenge. He said, "Let's build 2 altars, one for Baal and one for the Lord. We'll prepare sacrifices, but we won't light the fire. The God who answers by fire is the true God." The people agreed. This was a test of faith, a showdown between the true God and a false one. The prophets of Baal went first. They danced and shouted to their God all day long. They cried out to Baal, begging him to send fire. But there was no answer. Nothing happened. They became more and more desperate. Still Baal did not answer. Elijah mocked them. "Shout louder," he said. "Maybe Baal is sleeping. Maybe he's gone on a trip." The prophets of Baal became even more frantic. They cut themselves with knives and swords until blood flowed freely, but their efforts were in vain. There was no fire, no voice, no sign from Baal. Elijah's prayer and God's divine response. Now it was Elijah's turn. He rebuilt the altar of the Lord. He placed the sacrifice on the altar. Then he did something unexpected. He asked the people to drench the altar with water, not once, not twice, but 3 times. The water ran down the sides of the altar and filled the trench around it. With the stage set, Elijah prayed a simple prayer. He didn't shout or dance. He simply bowed his knees and spoke to God. He prayed for God to show himself strong. He prayed for the people to know that the Lord was the one true God. Suddenly the sky grew dark. A fire blazed down from heaven, consuming the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, even the dust. The fire was so intense that it licked up the water in the trench. The people were astonished. They fell to the ground and cried out, "The Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God." Elijah predicts the end of the drought. The fire on Mount Carmel was more than just a spectacle. It was a sign. It proved that the God of Israel was the one true God. After the fire, Elijah turned to Ahab and said, "Go up, eat and drink, for there is the sound of a heavy rainfall." For 3 years, the land had been parched by a drought. The people had suffered greatly. Now Elijah was announcing the end of their suffering. He was a prophet who heard from God. He knew that God was about to send rain. Ahab rushed back to his palace, eager to escape the coming storm. Meanwhile, Elijah climbed to the top of Mount Carmel. He bowed down on the ground and put his face between his knees. He prayed for rain. 7 times he sent his servant to look toward the sea. Finally, the servant returned with news. A cloud as small as a man's hand is rising from the sea. Elijah's incredible feat of outrunning the king's horses serves as a timeless reminder of what is possible when we place our faith in God. With Him, even the impossible becomes reality. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Your support helps us share more inspiring stories from the Bible.